And this is the Ingram Angle from Washington tonight. Now this week we were told that some of Dr. Seuss's books and Curious George, they're racist. But now radical educators are claiming our kids can be racist, get this, before they're even able to read. We're going to bring you the shocking documents, plus the completely bizarre interplay between Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden on a recent Zoom call. I know you missed it. Raymond Arroyo has that and more in Friday Follies. And tonight we bring you the Ingram Angle's second mystery guest. Here's the first hint. This apprentice hosted a reality show. The big reveal later in the hour. When Donald Trump took office, you know, he was cast by the left as a dictator with sinister plans for the country.
President Trump's inaugural address, I thought, was negative, was dark, was dystopian.
Donald Trump is authoritarian.
The kind of corrupt dictator in the making Trump is.
From beginning to end, Donald Trump has been an anti-democratic president.
Of course, all that was just really projection because now the Democrats control both chambers of Congress and the White House. We're seeing just how dark and dystopian their agenda really is. And it's perhaps most evident in their total militarization and lockdown of our nation's capital. Of course, it's one that leftist lawmakers, they want it to stay like that forever.
This is going to be the new reality here for a little while. This is why, you know, the fence is still up. That's why the National Guard is still here.
It is appropriate that we keep that security in place.
It's not going to be business as usual when it comes to the security.
We should have them here as long as they are needed.
It's never going to be safe enough because remember who they want to be protected from. You. You're certainly a bigger threat to them than, I don't know, the untold number of COVID-infected migrants pouring into the country. But you better not point that out, or Biden's media enforcers will lash out with the typical smears.
This nice racist twist to it, blaming migrants from Central America for bringing COVID. This sounds like the old days when people used to attack, you know, Haitian migrants and try to blame them for HIV.
Again, it's not about COVID. If it was, they would want our border closed down. Because they need you silenced, ostracized, demoralized, as they import new voters to offset and eventually replace all you old people, you traditionalists, all of you guys who know your history still. They not want you replaced and they want cheap labor. And so far, things are going according to plan. Today we learned that the Biden administration is evaluating a Virginia military base as a possible site to house unaccompanied migrant children. Amid a sharp rise in the migrants arriving at the U.S.-Mexico border, we're on tap for a record number. And of course, we're never going to get reliable information from the border about the Biden administration because they're more focused on turning our vast national security apparatus against you.
We are watching the threat stream, the information, social media, other sources with respect to this particular day, March 4th. But quite frankly, we are vigilant every day, as we must be when the threat is as acute as it is in the domestic violent extremism context.
Wait a second. Isn't it past March 4th? I think the threat of March 4th is over. Now, in case you're wondering when this all goes away, the answer is simple. It will not until Republicans take back Congress and then take back the White House. Until then, your visits to the Capitol, we call it the Capitol Hill Green Zone because it looks like Baghdad now. They're going to be a lot like what renowned journalist Cheryl Atkinson experienced, saying security was tighter than I've ever seen before, tighter than after 9/11 and tighter than during the presidential inaugurations I've covered. I wondered aloud to a senator how long the new heightened security posture would be the norm. It'll be like 9/11, he remarked. We'll get used to it. Oh, no. No. Let's be candid. All of this security, all of these fences, all the razor wire, the fact that Biden does not hold press conferences, it's all the result of the fact that we have a press corps that's no longer interested in asking real questions, holding Democrats accountable. Look, when we were kids, in the years after Watergate, the press would have gone nuts if the feds just started closing down entire parts of Washington, citing these amorphous, unnamed, non-specific threats. But now, they just nod and say, essentially, isn't this wonderful? Well, in the long run, all these lockdowns, all the razor wire, all the troops in D.C. will simply make the federal government more out of touch. And in turn, it's going to encourage more protests and, you bet, more support for the America First agenda. Now, I don't think it's going to hurt us at all. And it's going to help convince voters that they actually cannot trust the elites that are currently in power because they don't want to hear from you. They certainly don't want to see you in Washington. But all of this is still bad policy. It's absurd. And it's certainly ridiculous that we're among the few actually complaining about it. Joining me now, former Speaker of the House and Fox News contributor, Newt Gingrich. Newt, 6 weeks into Biden's first term, and the reaction to everything that I think that's been happening since he was inaugurated is to control the population, leave the border open, and then condemn the critics. Where does this end?
Oh, I think it ends with a huge repudiation. I think, if you got to go back home as a Democrat and defend censoring Dr. Seuss while protecting a fence around your own Capitol, you got a bigger and bigger burden to carry. And Nancy Pelosi has been piling devastatingly bad votes on her members. I mean, I think it's almost like they've concluded that they're going to lose control. So they got to get it all done in the first 2 years because they're going to lose the House by a big margin in 2010. So I think that, 2022, which they did lose in 2010. I think the real challenge here, and you were picking up on some of the weirdest stories that are out there that aren't political, where you have, so-called education people saying, oh, at 3 months, the baby's already racist. You have an entire class of people who, by any reasonable standard, are crazy. And if you look at what the National Education Association, the largest teachers union, recommends to replace Dr. Seuss, the prince who liked to cross-dress at night, that's literally one of the stories. And you have to think, how does this fit with the average American's vision? Dr. Seuss last year sold 6 million copies. Last year alone has sold, I think, 600 million worldwide.
But Newt, I have to ask you a question because, Newt, let's say there was a Christian family and a bunch of Christian families in the Midwest, maybe outside of Kansas City, and they don't like a book that's being taught in their elementary school because they think it pushes a sexual agenda on the kids. And they complain saying, that offends us and offends our sensibility. When they ask for books to be removed, what happens? They're called what?
Sure. Look, they're probably called bigots, but that's what the reaction is going to be against. I mean, I think what you're seeing is an absolute breakdown of the American people's belief that government is on their side. I think it's partly because of COVID, because of shutdowns, because of, as you yourself pointed out, when your government is so afraid of you that it has to put up razor wire and turn Washington, D.C. into downtown Baghdad, there's something profoundly sick going on. Now, I'm an optimist. Look, I think the American people are going to rebel and that next year's election is going to be a disaster for the liberals because I don't think they can go home and defend any of this. But I admit I'm an optimist. But in 1994, 2 years after Bill Clinton won, we got 54 seats. And radical ideas for a lot of the stuff they're going to grind through the House will never get through the Senate. And I think if we go to work, we could have a remarkable election next year.
Yeah, Speaker Pelosi, tear down this wall. I think that's going to be the new,
there you go.
New rallying cry. Yeah, Newt, great to see you tonight. Thanks so much. And here's some good news. Americans are more optimistic than ever about COVID and the outlook post-COVID. According to a new Gallup poll, a record 60% of Americans say the situation is improving, which of course it is. But that doesn't mean Dr. Doom is having any of that.
We have circulating variants in the community. Some of them have increased capacity to transmit, and some are less protected by the vaccines. You want a plan that you will be able, within a reasonable time, to pull back. but not at a time when we have circulating variants.
There he goes again. And of course, the study he's relying on to claim that these variants can thwart vaccines is far from rock solid. For starters, it's a preprint, which means it's not peer-reviewed. And when you actually read it, it's clear there's nothing to be worried about at all. Out of the 2,000 people tracked in the study, 0 died from the terrifying new strains. So obviously, the current vaccine and the naturally acquired immunity that we all get if we're exposed to various coronaviruses does offer protection, some protection about what we're supposed to be worried about in the first place. Remember, we were supposed to be worried about overwhelming the hospitals, not vanquishing every trace of virus on the face of the planet. But the goalposts keep shifting. Joining me now is Dr. Paul Elias.
I agree with you. The science is not on their side. And what we are seeing, we don't have the data. We don't have any evidence to show that the variants are more pathogenic. I mean, we know that when the virus mutates, it likely becomes more infectious. And that's what we're dealing with right now. And people like Dr. Fauci, and they sometimes, in all respects, the statements are almost absurd as they move these goalposts. Look, public health is not just about controlling infections and infection control. It's about chronic health also. We're going to have a lot of excess mortality in the years to come because of these lockdowns. And for reasons that escape me, really, Dr. Fauci and CDC, they're squandering a tremendous opportunity because they're doing a disservice to the American people. We have this report that came out yesterday about obesity being such a major risk factor. COVID exploits risk factors, and COVID has exploited obesity in the American population, particularly among the minority populations. And that's where President Trump's economic zones were so successful.
Dr. Alexander, what's really frustrating, and I'm not a medical expert, but I happen to have the great privilege and a great blessing of knowing really smart people who are not, going to be waving their hands around if something's not important. We were interviewing Dr. Stephen Smith, I think it was in March of last year, and this was at the very beginning of the pandemic. He was treating all of these COVID patients, and he kept talking about metabolic syndrome and the problem with people with high BMI, body mass index. That is such a huge problem. It was in Italy early on. It was one of the main comorbidities, along with hypertension, pre-hypertension, diabetes, so forth. So he said, I think at the time, America needs to go on a diet. That's one of the things we can do. And you never hear Fauci talk about that or D3 or ivermectin, because they haven't even given emergency use authorization for ivermectin. Haven't even put out anything about that. They're way behind all these other countries.
Definitely, and we have a lot of good science now on this early treatment you just mentioned for elderly high-risk people. But back to that point, the issue is that the metabolic syndrome, excess weight in the stomach area, high blood pressure, high sugar, etc. We know this is a serious risk factor, especially for the minority population. And I think that CDC and people like Dr. Fauci should use the podium to come to the people and have this very serious, important conversation. It will dramatically reduce your risk. And your medicine cabinet, I've been looking at your medicine cabinet, have dealt with this for over a year. This is not new to them. This data has always been there. They have actually squandered and failed this opportunity.
No, and now we find out, according to a new Japanese study, that the idea of double masking, which of course we were ridiculing from day one, double masking essentially has no effect. Much of a difference in a community, and they don't have that data, do they?
I know, and right now we've looked at all of the data and we've seen that the mask mandates are very ineffective. More importantly, the masks as they use, the blue surgical masks, the cloth masks, are not effective as standalone. They must be used within a compendium of other mitigation steps. So.
Well, if he were a children's illustrator, he would have been canceled by now for these comments. But all of this is distractions, Laura. The dogs, the Valentines, the press secretary, the marquee malarkey is meant to keep us from this reality. Joe Biden is not really in charge. This was from Thursday. Watch.
Now, am I supposed to speak, or is Swati going to say something? I was told I was going to hear from Swati. Did you want to say something? I'll be quiet.
This is his default position. I'll be quiet. What do I do? Who's speaking? Where do I go? Huh? What? And then the curtain comes down normally. It's very sad to watch, I have to say.
Well, he looks like many of our relatives when they were getting in their later years. And look, we all might be there sooner than we'd like, but it's not reassuring. That's all.
No, it's not. And Laura, look, turning to another topic, nobody likes getting shots or vaccines. And look, there's nothing worse than a doctor or a nurse who prolongs what I call the shot suspense. You know, they make a big production. They put on the glove, then they have to swab you like they're priming a wall. Then they have to tap the skin, they soften it up, knead it. Just get the shot in and get it over with. So it was nice.
I didn't know you were going to be so clumsy. I hope you're going to do better with my shot. Well, it didn't take this long to film 9 to 5. I'm still waiting.
Look, Laura, for a second there, I thought she was going to sing her hit, I Want to Slug You. But she didn't do that. She restrained herself. And look, this woman gave them $1 million at Vanderbilt for research into COVID, and she's doing a PSA for them. The least they can do is speed up the action. You know, I mean, don't make her wait.
Raymond, she could have cooked an entire breakfast for 6 people of grits, eggs, bacon, and fresh squeezed juice before they finish that vaccine. That is the worst. They always have trouble getting the needle in my arm, like I don't know, the blood never comes out or whatever. So they're always doing this. And then don't you love it when the phlebotomist tries to go in and get the blood, and they're like, oh, this one's not working. We got to go with a butterfly. What? Then they go in the top. Then like, oh, we have to go in near the wrist. It hurts a little more, the back of the hand. I'm like, oh, my God. I'll give you the back of the hand.
Yeah, well, look, let's give Dolly big points for restraint there. I was amazed by her grace under fire. Before we go, Laura, Nancy Pelosi introduced Joe Biden the other day at a Zoom event with Democrat lawmakers, and she used her grandchildren.
My grandchildren have for many, many years been longtime friends of Joe Biden. I took them for candy at a place, Dillon's, in New York. Well, they have sort of like swinging doors. I hear them pronounce. In order to open these doors, we do not say open sesame. We say open Biden. That's our magic word.
True.
Open Biden. I love it.
Laura, one pauses when considering what she just said. This could be the watchword for the entire party at this point. Anything they want, they just say, open Biden, and he signs the paper and off it goes. But after hearing this, I think most viewers will want to say, close Nancy. Have a good weekend, Laura.
Raymond, it's the same thing with Dr. Fauci, may I? Remember it was Mother May I? Remember that game? Mother May I take 3 steps? Mother May I? It's like, Dr. Fauci, may I go see my mother who I haven't seen in a year? Mother May I travel to Oregon? Mother May Dr. Fauci, may I? That's the new kids game, although at some point it will be canceled. So I have to
we'll see.
Just a warning to everybody. It will be canceled. Raymond, great to see you. Have a wonderful
About the show, and it's finally time to find out who our mystery guest is this week. All right, let's review the clues. Number 1, well, this apprentice hosted a reality show. Number 2, 5 Grammy nominations. Number 3, he's half of a dynamic duo. So who could it be? Mystery guest, reveal yourself. Those are easy clues. It's country music star John Rich of Big and Rich. We did the Democrat version, okay? Because you have to make it easy for the Democrats, John. He also hosts The Pursuit with John Rich exclusively on Fox Nation. John, thanks so much for being with us.
Yes, ma'am. Surprise. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Now, I want to start with something a little different because I think, if my memory serves me right, that your early dream was not necessarily to become a country star, but to become a team roper for the rodeo. Okay, first of all, what is that? And second of all, what would you have done if you weren't a singer? Really? Is that what you have done?
Oh, Laura, you're so cityfied. Come on. You don't know what a team roper is. So where I grew up in Amarillo, Texas, ain't a whole lot going on out there except for cows and combines and agriculture. And probably one of the coolest things you could do would be to be a team roper. So one guy ropes the horns and one guy ropes the heels. They call it heading and heeling. And, you impress all the girls if you can head and heel. And so I used to stand outside waiting on the school bus with my lariat. And I had these plastic steer horns sticking out of a bale of hay. And I would go 1, 2, 3, wham, and throw it and pull it back. That was my original big dream.
All right. Now, you're also a college football fan. We share that in common. And you're for 15 seasons. So how did that partnership come about?
Well, so, Big and Rich, we put out these big, high-powered, energetic country songs. We got this one, Coming to Your City, and College Game Day. Way back in the day, they said, hey, we're going to start going town to town, and that new Big and Rich song is perfect, Coming to Your City, because that's what we're doing. And we partnered up with ESPN, and, man, you look up, and Cowboy Troy and me and Big Kenny, 15 years of college football, man. It's been pretty cool.
All right, John, you have a bar in your home